Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Today's talk really came from an experience I had. I was at a CEO retreat and had an opportunity over lunch to sit at a table with two CEOs of so at the CEO retreat, I had an opportunity to sit at a table with two other CEOs. And those CEOs were CEOs of lead generation companies that you would recognize if I said their name. And both of which had this experiences in this last year where they were both in the process of buying and selling their own properties. And as they got talking, they were talking about how excited they were about the new properties that they had bought and sold. They were talking about their experience. And as it came out in this conversation, both of them had not used anybody within their own network. Now, these are both networks that really extol the fact that their agents are elite agents, that their agents are best of the best. They're all pre-screened, rated. They had the pick of the litter. They could have gone into their network and picked the best agent in their network, and neither one of them chose to do that. Both of them chose to use the elite agent that was the local elite agent in that neighborhood. And out of that conversation, I really wanted to piggyback on that and put together today's presentation, today's talk. And today we're going to be talking about the elite equation, how you can differentiate yourself from everybody else in your field, differentiate yourself from other offices, from other teams, from other agents, even in your own office. And so I'm going to lay out some things that I have found in my close to 30 years of doing real estate in the luxury space on what I have found is really working. And I'm going to amplify that on what's going on today as we look at the overall trends and all the different things that are happening in the world around us. So with that, let's go ahead and get rolling. Today, we are in a new era. New era with lawsuits, new era with how commission rules are doing, a new era with NAR having some issues. New era on everything that is going on in the world that we see. We've got the advent of AI. We've got all these different things that are converging at one time to create a new era for real estate. The rules that we lived on in yesteryear have to be redefined as we go forward. And one of the things that I have found as we go through that process is really looking at how can we redefine ourselves in a way that we can meet these new challenges and be ahead of the game. And I'm going to share some tactics and some things that we've been working with some of our clientele that have allowed them in the last 6 months to not only get through these times of challenge, but also to thrive in these times of challenges. We have across our board, the agents and the brokers and the teams we're working with, they're getting more money today for commissions than they were previously. They've looked at how can we redefine ourselves in this new era and really amplify those things and take advantage of some of these different changes and go forward in a new way. I'm going to preface this by saying, from my seat, and I look at luxury real estate on a global basis and kind of am in the numbers and I geek out every month on where the trends are and where we can be ahead of the trends. I'm really seeing on a macro level that we've got about 18 to 36 months from a time frame basis to be in the top 10% of your marketplace. If you're not in the top 10% of the marketplace in the next 18 to 36 months, my prediction is it's going to be exponentially harder for you to break into that space. It's going to be exponentially easier if you're in that space to stay in that space. Just because I am seeing this trend, and I've seen it for the last 5 years, that those that are doing more are doing more. The people that are doing less are doing less. A lot of the changes we've seen in the last, whether it be market shifts in the last couple of years, or whether it be through these lawsuits and how we do business shifts and philosophical shifts that we're experiencing as an industry, the reality is that this trend is amplifying. We're seeing this trend continue to just explode. It wasn't that long ago that a really large team maybe had 3 or 4 people on it. Now we're seeing the advent of mega teams. We're seeing teamerages that have been blowing up. Now we're seeing teams doing more than what your average broker did 15 years ago. The industry has changed, and the way that the perception of the public has changed. And so the people that are really providing value, that are really driving value and establishing themselves as the elite in the marketplace, they're doing more and more business. They're capturing an enormous amount of market share. And as we have the dip that we've seen over the last year and a half in transaction counts, as we finish up this year and we start to rebound in next year where we have transaction counts come up, you're going to start seeing that those teams, those individuals, and those brokers that have really carved out the top space within the marketplace, they're going to explode overnight, assumingly. Really, it's not overnight. They've been doing the work for the last couple of years, but putting in that legwork to get that bigger market share. So when the transactions come back, they're going to take more than their lion's share. And that's something that I want everybody on the call to really understand. The 18 to 36 months is your timeline to put in an enormous amount of smart effort to really establish yourself in that top 10% of your marketplace. So let's talk about a couple of ways to do that. First and foremost, strategic positioning. We got to stack the deck in our favor. Life isn't fair, and the people that understand the rules can understand where to break them most appropriately. And so when we're talking about stacking the deck, if you're in that top 10%, you can stack it to your favor. And there's just nothing wrong with that. It's just the way that the way that our world works. I wish that life was fair. It is not. Since it's not, we might as well take advantage of that. So let me give you some ideas on where you can stack the deck. First and foremost, we have to understand that the elite agent is different than the traditional agent. The traditional agent, we're seeing mediocre is not good enough. Even good is not enough anymore. You have to go to the elite. And we see this in sports. We see this in cars. Let's look at sports. The difference between a professional player that is mediocre and good, huge difference, right? In actual what they do, but small difference in what they get paid. But the difference between good and exceptional, good and elite, small differences, but huge amounts in difference in what they get paid. Same thing with cars. I can buy a car for $50,000 and it's an okay car. If I go to a car that's $150,000, there's a pretty substantial jump as far as what I'm getting for that particular, in the car, the way it drives, the accoutrements that I get within the car. Everything about the car is just substantially different between good and great. But when I go from great to exceptional or elite, and I go from $150,000 to a $500,000 car, the actual differences are in the details. And one of the things that when we talk about a luxury is far less of a price point. It's more of a mindset. And this is something that we really have to start drilling down into our business and let permeate into every area of our business, from understanding the client, how we're approaching marketing, the networks and connections we have, the negotiation skills that we put forward, the professional development with it that we engage in. All of those things, the differences are going to be in the nuances. I assume if you're on this call and you got invited to be on this call, you're already great. And a lot of you on this call are already elite. But if you're already great, it's going to be in the small nuanced differences between what you're doing now to what you can do in the future to make that jump into elite. It's going to be in the tiny things. It's going to be in the obsessive things. And those are things that we're going to start drilling into and really having to understand over the next 18 to 36 months in order to really establish ourselves as the new baseline as we move forward. The public, the reason that we're in the situation we are as an industry is because we as an industry have hid the mediocre and protected the incompetent. And that is changing. That's changing in real time as we're approaching this new era. And as we're transitioning into this new era, the people that are exceptional are going to blow the doors off of the people that are just mediocre. And you want to be in that space. The second thing when it comes to really establishing yourself in this new era is understanding that we've got to make this mental shift from sales to advisory. Everything we do has to be coming from an advisory role. We've got to play the long game. The elite always play the long game. The elite always focus on What is best for our agents, or best for our agents if I'm a broker, best for those on my team if I'm a team leader, best for the clients as if I'm a practitioner, right? But coming from a place of advisory, in my client interaction, how do I focus on going from focusing on closing deal to deal and moving from client to client to it being an advisor and building long-term relationships? How can I start going to a place where I'm now transitioning and I'm now transcending relationships beyond the transaction, approaching things from a sales standpoint, going to an advisor standpoint, taking on this consultative approach, something that really understands the client's needs and providing personalized solutions. This is going to become more and more important as we have this flush of AI that's come into the mix. Things are starting to homogenize. You can kind of tell if something's AI driven. You want to be in a place where, as an advisor, you are transcending those differences, problem solving, market knowledge, value proposition. Again, the difference between great and elite is a really small difference. It's in the details. It's how much you know about the inventory that you're representing. It's in the smallest things that you're going to have the widest margin of what you're actually going to get paid. You know, the people we're working with, they're all profit motivated, right? At the end of the day, we want to make enough money to spin our worlds. And for each one of us, that's different. But when it comes down to it, we can either be ego driven or we can be profit driven. And being profit driven is really the place that's going to focus us in on making sure that we're in that elite space, because we're focusing on the smallest details in the marketing that we're doing, in the branding that we're doing, in the way we present ourselves. In everything we do, it's in the tiny minute details. So become an advisor versus a salesperson. We're going to need to make that change as we move forward into this new world. Now, I'm going to share with you, because you're here today, something that we only reserve for our paying clients. And I'm going to give this to you because you're part of this. So on screen, there's a QR code. If you take a snapshot of it, there's going to be a form to fill out, but we're going to give you the 12-step branding process. So for each one of our clients, we take them and as part of their onboarding experience through 12 steps to really help them hone who their brand is, what their brand is, who their ideal clients are, because for each of you, it's very different. Even if you're sitting next to another 80 agents in your office and you guys are all elite and you guys are all working in the same marketplace, the difference between you and the person sitting next to you comes down to these details: who your ideal clients are, how you reach those clients, what you should be saying to those clients. All of those different things come into this space. And so because you're participating today, I want to give you a free offer that if you let me know you're interested, we'll send you this 12-step branding process. And as part of that, we'll even throw in creating a custom GPT for you that becomes your ghostwriter and your brand advisor, something that will help you really maximize the beauty of AI, of allowing you to do more with less time, but also keep things super consistent across the board. Elevating your brand and getting into the minute details. This 12-step branding process is going to produce a document that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 pages long of all the things about you and your market and what makes you unique and makes you special. And it's going to blow your mind how detailed we can get the avatars, the people that you're trying to reach, to your ideal clients in this process. And then it becomes your job at that point in time to take that and now amplify it and be able to grow your business in a way that makes sense for you and your goals. So the second pillar I'm going to talk about today when it comes to being elite is the elite offer unparalleled client experiences. They understand it's not about you, right? It's not about us as agents. And I think, again, going back to one of the things that we're experiencing within this industry is we're still making it about us. It's making it as, buyer's commissions are about us. How are we going to do this? Even on strong listing agents, they're trying to negotiate for the buyer's agents to do these carve outs and try and work things around. You're approaching it wrong if you're thinking that way. It's not about you, it's about the clients. And if we start looking at each one of the clients we work with, how can we provide them with the best client experience? It's going to change the game. So from the elite agent's perspective, think about it from providing experiences to the client. That's what's going to get you referred. That's what's going to set you apart. Understand that you are not competing just against other real estate agents. From a service standpoint, the expectations that are on your shoulders are going to be measured against the experience they have from other service providers. When I I had a Chevy Suburban, and when I took it in for service, I had a very typical Chevy experience. I also, at the same time, had a luxury car, BMW. And when I took the BMW in, the service experience was completely different. Now, the price of the car was relatively the same. They were both, roughly just under $100,000 when all was said and done. But the service experience and the ongoing experience was completely different. Chevy didn't do much for me at all. Their waiting room had plastic chairs, had a coffee pot with stale coffee in it. They were using styrofoam cups, all of the different things. It was just not a great experience when I went down and dropped off my car. They didn't have loaner cars if I dropped off my car for service. I had to either arrange for a ride, or they would be so magnanimous to be able to say, "Hey, go ahead and call Enterprise, and they'll come pick you up." Right? It was no skin off of their nose. Now, when it comes to the BMW, they washed my car for free. I could just stop by and say, "Hey, can you wash the car?" They had a barista, on staff there. They had comfortable leather seats. They had comfortable work areas if you wanted to wait. Everything about it was a great experience. When you dropped off their car for service, they always had a loaner that was at least the quality of your car, if not better. And it was always, everything about the experience was completely different. Those are the things that you're being measured against. From your clients are shopping at high-end retail. They have personal shoppers. They have, when they fly, they're flying either first class or business class, or they have their own airline, their own plane. Everything that you're doing has to elevate to the experiences of the other service providers that your clients are experiencing. And so when we come from a standpoint of understanding, it's not about you, and we're not measuring it from your perspective, we're measuring it from their perspective. All of a sudden, we can unlock our brains and unlock our potential to really start looking at how can we offer unparalleled client experiences as we go forward. Let me tell you a little bit about an experiment we did a few years ago. So a few years ago, I had the opportunity of taking 3 different groups. Each group contained 20 agents. The rules for the group was that none of the agents could have made $100,000 in GCI prior. And so what happened is we put them into 3 groups and we did masterminds. The masterminds were once a month. Once a month, we'd get together. These were people from a variety of different locations across the country. They were in a variety of different brokerages. They were in a variety of different experiences as far as where their real estate was and the markets they were in. But the deal was nobody had made over $100,000 in GCI. And we did this experiment to say, how can we really amplify their business over a 2-year period? And so at the end of the second year, we took this snapshot and we took the averages of the 20 agents that were in each one of these groups. Now, the first group, at the end of the 2 years, that snapshot, on average, they had gone from where they were before to just under $180,000 a year. Now, that's not a bad increase. When you're talking about somebody, on average that was averaging, let's say $40,000 to $50,000 before, now doing 180, they were doing really well. They were also averaging 54 hours a week. And so they were focused on just hard prospecting, cold calling, door knocking, expired FSBOs, all the stuff that as an industry we've been teaching for years. So those are going to be the sciences of prospecting. They work. There is if I sit you down in front of a phone and I give you a script and I give you a bunch of phone numbers and I say this, dial these numbers, you will get leads. You will get business. And this group proved that out. You can do a good amount of business if you're just focused and you get really good at what you're doing. So $180,000, just shy of $180,000 in 54 hours a week. Now, what's interesting about this particular group is we found that the highest risk management issues came out of this group. That's something that was kind of a byproduct of doing business that way. it, most of the agents in that group developed the mindset that people were transactions and people were numbers versus actual people. And so that was something we had to work through. But again, substantial increase in GCI. The second group, we said, you can't do any of the stuff that the first group does. All you can do is go back to kind of an old school farming standpoint of you're going to take a geographic area and you're just going to focus on that geographic area. And you're going to you're going to build relationships within that community. You're going to do everything you can to market to that community. And after the 2 years, their average was just over $291,000 in GCI. Their average of time per week that they were spending was 46. Now, again, from a pure return on investment standpoint, that was a huge increase for these 20 agents. These 20 agents did an amazing increase over a period of 2 years. And at the end of that, had really substantial businesses and could write their ticket to wherever they wanted to go. They owned their neighborhoods. They were number one in market share in their neighborhoods. And it became a very systematic thing. Now, a couple of things we learned in this as far as best practices is consistency beat quality. All things considered, if consistency was matched, quality won. But if consistency wasn't matched, quantity beat quality. We also learned that if you wanted to break into a new area, if you were doing something, mailing something or dropping something off every week, so 4 times a month, you got your first listing in that particular area on average in the first 90 days. And after the first 90 days, you were off to the races. If you were doing something 3 times a month, it took 6 months to break into an area. If you were doing it twice a month, it took you a year to break into an area. If you were doing something less than twice a month, you might as well light your money on fire, and because you got no traction whatsoever in that. So again, best practices. And if you reach out to me after this, I'm happy to share the systems and best practices for each one of these groups that we learned over time, that this is something that was really, all the lessons associated with that. So if you see yourself in one of these groups and you're like, hey, I want to get better at this, by all means, reach out to me. We've got some tools and resources and some downloads we'd love to share with you to help you accelerate your business. From my standpoint, I want the best. I want the elite to win in this game, because I think that from a moral standpoint, you taking business from people that are incompetent and you taking business from mediocre saves us as an industry and saves those clients from headache and heartache. The third group was a group that we said, you can't do anything that number 1 is doing, and you can't do anything that number 2 is doing. All you can do is focus on building a book of business. And I'm going to use the word book of business because it is specific to building a book of business. One of the things we found with that group is after the 2 years, they were working 34 hours a week on average, and they were making over $450,000 on average in GCI. Again, monumental shift, doing business with people that they knew, liked, and trust. Now, when we talk about sphere of influence, there's a lot of really great coaches out there that focus on sphere of influence. Buffini does a brilliant job with it. There's a few, Tom Ferry does a brilliant job with it. There's a few people out there that are doing really well. But I found that when we talk about sphere, we're asking the wrong questions. One, if I ask an experienced agent, how much of your business comes from your sphere, past clients or referrals, most of them say somewhere between 85 and 90%. And it's really hard to improve on 85 or 90%. There's just not much of a delta to go after that space. But what I found is if we recontextualize the question and say, what is your yield? All of a sudden we had a huge amount of difference. So when it comes to yield, how many closed transactions do you get for every 100 people that are in your sphere? And what we found is that if you're an experienced agent that just kind of ignores it, you're gonna have between a 1% and 3% yield. For every 100 people that you have in your sphere of influence, you'll get 1 to 3 transactions that close. If you're doing something with Buffini or doing something with Tom Ferry and you're all in with those programs, your yield is going to jump up to somewhere in the 7 to 8% bracket. So for every 100 people, you have 7 or 8 closed transactions. Not bad. But what we found was by obsessing about this and really digging into it, we created this program called the Private Client Program, which was based off of the relationships you have with banking. Now, once you hit a certain net worth and once you have certain privileges within a bank, you get assigned a private banker. And your experience with that bank is completely different with a private banker than it would be otherwise. And so we took the focus off of transactions and we started focusing on loyalty. And so one of my tests when it comes to whether somebody's actually in your sphere or in your book of business or not is if you gave me your list and I called somebody on that list and I said, hey, my name's Chris. I'm thinking about moving into your area. Do you have an agent you'd refer me to? If they answer your name, they count. If they don't answer your name, they don't count. And you have work to do. And what we found with this particular group is that we run into human capacity around 200 people when it comes to the guys on the call, and about 250 people for the ladies. The ladies just are more adept at building relationships and keeping track of people than the guys do. So they have an inherent advantage when it comes to this. So 200 to 250 people you can keep tabs with. If your sphere of influence is bigger than that number, they're not really loyal to you and you don't really have a sphere of influence. You have a database. You have a lot of people that you market to, but you don't have loyalty from those people. If you have 6 people, 10 people, you don't have a big enough sample size in order to really get the yields. And what we found is by putting in the private client program and systematically paying attention to this and being obsessive about it, year one, the yields were 15%. So on average, if you had 100 people that fit into this criteria and you were marketing to them in the way that we're and engaging with them in the way that we tell you to do it with your private client group, you're going to find that you had 15 closed transactions every year that you count on. The second year, it went up to 25%. In the third year, as we tracked these people even further, it went up to 35% on average. We had some people that were doing 48%. So, as time goes on, those 200 people get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. They get more and more productive as you focus on those particular people. And imagine if you could close 48 closed transactions for 100 people in your private client group or your book of business, that would change your life. I don't care how many transactions you're doing. If you could have those kind of yields, it would change your life because that becomes a foundation now that you can build on. But you can only do that if you really establish yourself as an elite person in that space. And again, all of these things, if you find yourself in any of these categories, reach out to us. We're happy to share the resources, the downloads, and kind of walk you through how you can implement some of these things to really amplify your business. Because again, I want to go back to that 18 to 36 month window. Those are things that are going to be really amplified. We've also taken this, if you're listening to this internationally, and applied it in an international scope. So your nuances of how you do real estate in international markets is different than the US, but there's some fundamentals that you can apply that are really going to amplify your business and 10x your business as we go forward in the next couple of years. The other thing when it comes down to providing exceptional experiences is really focusing on customer follow-up. A number of years ago, we commissioned a study that went out and we hired a big team that was offshore to go through all of the blogs and all of the comments for real estate agents and pull out all the negative ones. And we wanted to see where the trends were as far as what people were complaining about in real estate. And it was really a fascinating study because there was roughly 20 different things that people complained about. But the one that was the biggest thing by not a little bit, biggest thing was communication. My agent never followed up. 85% of your business is in the follow-up. 15% of our business is getting leads that are ready to go today. Meet somebody at an open house, meet somebody at a party, meet somebody wherever you are, and they're ready to go right now. But if you take on this attitude that I'm building a book of business, everybody you meet that's not loyal to somebody else can be loyal to you, and they will spit out transactions. But they're going to spit out transactions over a period of time. And so you have to build this consistent system to be able to follow up with your customers. You've got to consistently follow up with your clientele. And this is so much more important. I mean, it's always been important, but it's now amplified as we kind of go through these changes as an industry that's mandating that we have buyers sign agreements right up front. Again, there's some secrets behind the underneath the layers of today's talk that we can share with you that make it absolutely seamless to get those agreements, to get them at the price that you think you're worth, and to allow you to really focus your business on the things that are super important. And when you do that, you open up this time that now you can dedicate to really focusing back on how can I follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up? How can I communicate? How can I become that elite agent, which is somebody that now the relationship just transcends transactions. They're no longer just looking to us as a transactional commodity. They're looking at us as their professional. They're loyal to us in that space. And that is how the people that we've been working with for a period of time insulate their business and make it impervious from other people stealing their clientele. Again, we're not focusing on transactions. Transactions are a byproduct of this relationship that you build with people and the loyalty you dig with people so that you can really have this deep understanding of what their needs are and really help them in an advisory and consulting kind of mindset to get them where they want to be. On the creating client experiences, I want you to focus on service excellence. What are the things that are the most important things that you can do as you go through everything? And this comes from how do you answer the phone? How do you follow up with somebody the first time you meet them? How do you follow up with listings that you've got now that listings are sitting on the market a little bit longer? What are things that you can do to make sure that your service excellence is going above and beyond? You want to create as many wow moments as possible. I like Mexican food. And if I go to a Mexican restaurant and I have great service and I have, good carnitas, I'll go back. I'll keep going back to that restaurant. But if they provide a service level that makes me go, wow, or if the food makes me go, wow, it's in that wow moment that now they have earned my referrals. And so when you're doing your business and you're thinking about your operating procedures, you're thinking about your systems, you're thinking about all these different things that you can do, where can you implement wow moments in every aspect of that relationship? That's number one. Number two, really focus on relationships that transcend transactions. You've got to start thinking outside the box. You've got to start looking at people and investing in people and really helping them understand that you are their real estate professional and that it's not just transactionally based. There's going to be times we have to make hard calls. There's going to be times that we interact and we follow up with people and we provide value to people on an ongoing basis. And we may have that person in our book of business, and we may be serving them for 5 years before they do anything. But when they do, they are yours. They will refer people in that process. That is where you're going to take your yield from 1 to 3% if you're ignoring it, 7% ish if you're working with some of the coaches that really focus on this, up to the 15%. It's that secret right there that really amplifies that and takes you to the next level. The third thing in creating client experiences that's essential is you have to have consistency in delivery. You have to know how you handle each thing, because if you start doing these things, if you start implementing these things, you're going to scale. And when you start to scale, you cannot rely on your own personality anymore to provide amazing results. You're going to have to start thinking in terms of systems. Some people that when we first start working with them, they have really great businesses and they're really great agents, but we have to make the leap into building some systems and to doing some things around them that really help them scale so that they can go to exceptional. And we're unique in that because everybody else tries to fit you into their systems. We instead take a look at you and develop systems around you, because honestly, that's what it takes in luxury. And we've been able to kind of carve out that space because we focus on you and creating systems around you that are actually going to work. So For everybody, it's a little bit different. There's some baseline things that we talk about and kind of, teach, if you will. But at the end of the day, the magic happens when you start developing things around you and who you are. We have a 3-question test when it comes to taking a client-centered approach. And the 3-question test, I think, is really important for you philosophically to start thinking differently in. The first question is, do they feel respected? You have to answer that question from their perspective versus yours, because we're all good at what we do. So of course we're trying to treat people with respect, but at the end of the day, do they feel respected? If they feel respected, that's the test. It doesn't really matter how you feel. It matters how they feel. The second thing is, did they feel like you exceeded expectations? And sometimes we're our worst enemy in this, because if you're going on appointments and you're giving them a list of 5,000 things that you do for them, if you fail to provide 2 of those, you've disappointed them, because you promised big and even though you delivered big, you missed a couple. So part of this is about managing their expectations, telling them the truth about this experience. Selling your house is never fun. You got to keep it clean all the time, no matter what we put on the MLS. People are still going to show up and want to see it, off the cuff. There's just going to be some things that are just problematic. And so we need to be honest about some of those problematic things. We're going to tell them we're their guide. We're going to help them through all this process, but making sure that we're putting the right expectations in place and then building systems that allow us to exceed those expectations. For example, if you tell somebody, if you have every expectation you're going to call somebody tomorrow, don't tell them you're going to call them tomorrow. Tell them, I'll give you a call in 48 hours, and then call them tomorrow, because you're exceeding expectations. If you tell them you're going to call them tomorrow and it goes over 24 hours, all of a sudden they feel disappointed. Or at best, you call them in 24 hours, all you did was meet their expectation. You didn't exceed it. So this is kind of a 2-pronged approach. One, we're going to lower their expectations so that we can then deliver above them. And then the third test that I think is really important when it comes to your business and the longevity of your business is what you're doing in the long-term best interest of your business. We're not doing this out of charity. We love our clients and we love houses and we love all these things that we get to do on an everyday basis. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, is what I'm doing in the long-term best interest of our business? You need cash flow. You need to make money in order for this to make sense for you and for you to continue to serve clients. And so those 3 questions, no matter what you put in your business, if you put those different things if you use that as a filter, you're going to make really great decisions for your business. And again, going back to that 18 to 36 month time frame, as you're building systems, as you're doing marketing, as you're doing all these different things, put them through those three different questions, and it will not steer you along as you go through that. The next pillar on being an lead agent is investing in robust growth frameworks. You've got to be able to uncap your scale. You right now are capped with your scale based on the systems that you have in place, the mindset that you keep, and the things you're doing that are getting in your own way. And those things, we need to bust through all those things and really uncap the scales so that you can see how big your business is. No matter where your business is right now, I guarantee you, in 3 years, if you make this leap to the elite, you are going to be absolutely blown away with what you're able to accomplish in the next 3 years. The amount of GCI that you are going to produce 3 years from now versus today is mind-bending. You are not going to have incremental growth. You're going to have exponential growth. The market is working into your favor. The chaos that we're seeing around us is working into your favor. All these different things in the background on a macro basis are working into your favor, where all of these things are going to click into place. And if you are ready for the deluge of business that's going to be coming into your space, you're going to be able to take advantage of that, and you're going to do things that you can't even imagine are possible today. So when we talk about going from, I'm talking about systems and developing systems, we have to first understand that we start this business with personality-based systems. It's based on who you are, how you act, if you're gregarious and you're a great networker, all of your systems are based on you. You know, that's great. But one of the things that I think is really important is, once you start making the kind of money that you want to make, you start wanting to cut back on some of the hours you're investing, and you want to invest them in other things like family, like yourself, like vacations, like all these different things. And if everything is personality based, you're going to be hamstrung because it all depends on you. You get sick, something happens to you, for God forbid, your business stops. And so if you make the transformation from personality based systems to a system based business, all of a sudden your business becomes uncapped. You can go as big as you want to go. We have the privilege of working with people that make obscene amounts of money. Two of the top three teams in the country are people that we have worked with to help them get there. This is something that you can absolutely just totally transform, but you've got to mentally make that mindset. You've got to purpose to make the mindset that you're going to go from your personality based systems to a system based business, because the growth is limited by what you've got in place there. At Real Estate Luxury Leaders, we have 12 different areas that we have identified as being really important for you to have a mastery level knowledge of in order to move forward. And each one of them, we're all weaker in some than others. But whether it become from research and development and innovation that you're putting into your business, or marketing and sales, finance and operation, the culture, or how you do your business, how people feel about the experience that you're providing. Your personal brand is becoming more and more important as the world continues to evolve. Time management, your vitality, team building, recruiting. How do you find the right people to be working with? All of those 12 things, if you really want to go to elite and really blow the top off of where you're at now and where you can be, those 12 areas are areas that you need to develop some mastery in. And we've got resources for all of those. And we've got a lot of things that you can plug into for each one of those. So if you're like, hey, Chris, I really am struggling with marketing. Great. Let's have some conversations about marketing, what you can do to really amplify your marketing and become a master at the game with marketing. If you're a broker owner and you're like, how can I market more effectively so that I can establish our office as the brand, and our office as the place to go within our marketplace? We can have some really great discussions around that. Any one of these different areas, again, you're going to want to look at and say, how can I get better in each one of them? And what we end up doing as humans, and as we continue to get better, is we are always in a place where growth is addictive. And so we start getting really good at marketing, and we find that our marketing is now outpacing our sales abilities. So we start working on sales abilities, so our conversion rates are where they need to be, and we get our sales ability up to where it needs to be. And then that bleeds over to, okay, now we're spending a lot and making a lot of money. Let's take a look at finance. How much are we actually keeping at the end of the year? How much are we investing into the future? How are we future-proofing our business for different cycles within the real estate business? That goes into operations. All of them kind of build and work with one another. And what we end up doing is kind of going from what's really important, where are you weakest right now, focusing on that, and then shifting gears and saying, okay, now that's opening up some weaknesses that we need to work on in some of these other areas. And so whether you're doing this for yourself, whether you're working with another coach or advisor, or whether you're working with us, having these 12 things in mind, these are the things that you need to really kind of keep in mind as you're building your business and building the culture. That's going to be super important as you go forward. The other thing that I'm going to say as a caveat on this is you have got to own your leads. If you are buying leads or participating in lead generation programs, and there's a lot of really great ones out there, and there is a business to be made, and you can do a lot of really great business on doing that. Zillow, the Zillow programs, or homes.com program. There's a lot of programs out there that you can do a tremendous business. But I'm going to tell you, over the next 18 to 36 months, you have got to mentally have a plan where you can actually own those leads. With Zillow, you don't own those leads. Zillow owns those leads. And if you want to be elite, you have got to own your own lead generation. You've got to own your own leads that are coming in. Your business development has to be focused on what's best for you. I'm not saying throw those away. I'm not saying get out of those programs. I'm just saying mentally you've got to make a shift because those business models are going to be changing. The way that they develop business and the way that they drive business is going to be changing. And you want to be ahead of that and future proof your business by owning your own leads. So a little carve out and caveat, something you really need to be thinking about as you develop this elite level of understanding. And I'm going to kind of coast into a landing here by parking on cash flow. One of the things that is of the utmost importance is for you to understand how to control your cash flow. It is the lifeblood of your business. And the truth is that if you don't figure this out, no matter how many zeros you make in your GCI, no matter how big your checks are, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And so if you can figure out the cash flow, when we talk about finance, we always start at cash flow because it's the most important piece. And I have seen massive agents, massive teams, massive broker owners that had 18 offices end up folding over the course of 18 to 24 months because they couldn't figure out the cash flow piece. You've got to figure out the cash flow piece. And so again, whether you're working with us or whether you're working with somebody else, understand that cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. If you want to grow, you've got to focus on that. If you have bill collectors that are chasing you because you haven't closed something big in a period of time, or if the market shifts and we go to a place where luxury listings sit on the market for on average 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you've got to be able to manage your cash flow so that you can continue to serve your clients. And those that can are going to make exponential leaps in their business as we go forward. And those that can't are going to crash and burn. And the crash and burns are never pretty. And we all recognize that because we've all seen the headlines from people that are leaders in the space that burnt out and crash and burn because they just couldn't figure out their cash flow. You've got to understand that you are operating a business and that business requires cash flow. And that is the most important financial thing that you can focus on. The rest of it, your investment, how big of a war chest you have, how much you're, how you're managing your P&L and your balance sheet, all of those different factors, all of them come out of the importance of understanding the cash flow piece of that. I'm going to finish up today by inviting you to connect with me. We do Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, and LinkedIn. We do a lot of stuff that pushes stuff out organizationally. But if you connect with me personally, I'm always pushing out tips, and the tips are different for each one of those platforms based on the platform. But one of the things that I am obsessive about personally is you. My whole purpose in life is to make sure that you are ahead of your competition and that the elite in this game are more elite than anybody else, whether it be coming shifts in the marketplace or whether it be trends that I'm seeing or whatever those cases are. This is what I live, breathe, and eat. I live, breathe, and eat all the things that are going on in the macro level so that we can tailor that to the micro level for you and your business. And so it doesn't cost anything to follow me. You're going to get some tips and some techniques and some different things and invitations to stuff that we're doing in the future. So I invite you to connect with me. I really want to take a second and really thank you for taking the time to carve out of your schedule so you can join us today. I don't take it lightly that the people on this call are legends within your marketplace. The people that are on this call are great at what you do. So your time is so incredibly valuable. And the fact that you chose to share some of it with us is something I will never take lightly. So with that, I wish you adieu. I wish you the best. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.